So it is Tuesday, October 24th. We are on the precipice as we record of Frozen Frenzy, where all 32 teams are playing. I am your host, Michael Sparacino, aka Shades. Michael Shades Sparacino. I don't know why I said it like that. Alongside, as always, Liam the Shellmaster Godimer. This is Pucks and Brews. Liam, how are you?
I'm doing really well. We are getting into the thick of the hockey season, even though we're still in the beginning of sorts. Our beloved New York Rangers are confusing shades. A lot of teams that we expected to be at the bottom of the league are at the top of the league. A lot of teams that we expected to be at the top are at the bottom. So it is a good time for an episode of Pucks and Brews. And I got my water here. Do you have your cold brew? Come on,
I
let's see it.
absolutely have my cold brew.
There it
I,
is.
and I had Chipotle earlier, so this might end in disaster later, but we shall see.
You know what my favorite oh God, you caught me off guard with that one. You know what my favorite part of the title of our podcast, Pucks and Brews. We have
Wait,
not had
let
a
me uh
beer.
let me give you a hint. For those who are just listening and not watching, you're not going to get this at all.
Gotta
But
watch.
here's
That's what I
something.
mean.
But Liam, here's something that Seattle, the Kraken, couldn't do the other night against the Rangers.
Yeah, I couldn't turn the lights on. Well, should have played on the side of the rink with the lights. Panarin said, "Hey, I want to play on the side that's darker. It makes it harder for the goalies." And what happens? Well, he just scores 2 goals. So, you know, but
And didn't one of his goals actually come on the lighted side?
I'm not sure. I know one definitely beat Grubauer on the dark side, but I'm not sure.
Yeah,
We'll
I
have
mean,
to.
we're gonna get back into this later, but that was a weird game.
That was a very, very weird game for sure.
Yeah, but
Surprised. I'm surprised they played it, to be honest. I mean, I'm happy, that the players decided to kind of go forth with it.
oh yeah,
But I don't know. In that kind of scenario, before that night happened, I would have thought that players would have balked on it. But I'm happy. Happy they played. Happy the Rangers got the 2 points. Kraken are probably regretting it though.
oh, I think they absolutely are. And whoever is in charge of the lighting there, or whether it be a specific individual or the team of employees there, they got to get their shit together.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. And you know what? There are so many factors that go into, just overall game production as somebody who works, in a part of it. So the fact that they couldn't get it on, I bet that there were a lot of people inside Climate Pledge Arena that were stressing out. So hopefully they get it fixed for the next game. And again, I'm happy that the game went forth, like I said before.
Yeah, for those who are listening to the podcast, we've mentioned this before, but we'll mention it again. Liam is a legitimate play-by-play announcer for the Atlanta Gladiators of the ECHL. So he's made it big and he still comes back to help me. That's a true friend right there.
Haven't made it big yet, but you know what? Definitely blessed and grateful to be the spot that I'm in. But Shades, no matter where I go, if I'm in the NHL in the next year, I will still be here for Pucks and Brews every single time you text me. So no matter what happens.
My guy, my guy.
And when you finish the New York City Marathon and you beat your time by quite a bit, I hope that you'll still come on with me,
Yeah,
Mr.
before
Big
we
Shot.
get into the body of the episode, we're in the introduction right now. I don't know why I just made an English class reference, but this is where my brain's at today. But yeah, I am running New York City Marathon next Sunday. I have been training very hard for 6 months, and I'm hoping to break 4 hours. So
And
I'm
you're gonna do
definitely
it.
going to tell the story of race day, first podcast episode after that, if we don't record next week. So to be determined, you know. So it's always a little bit of a wild
Bit of a
card.
cliffhanger, definitely.
Yeah, we'll leave you on the cliffhanger for now, and I got to put my phone on silent. All right,
That
so
that was that was me actually. I'm sorry.
actually
Got
no, that
two
was me.
phone calls. That was you too. Oh
Yeah,
wow.
I just got the text. Da-da-da.
Oh, I
And
gotta
what better way to lead in to the main portion of Pucks and Brews without my camera going out of focus?
You know what, Shades? This is really a classic episode. We got the cold brew. You messed up the title for Mike Shades Sparacino. The camera's out of focus. This is traditional Pucks and Brews right here.
This is how you know we're gonna have a good episode.
Absolutely. 100%. Stick
All right,
around.
all right, enough of this.
There we go.
Okay, so now that we're back on track here, Liam, let's talk about the supposed not supposed, the injury to Connor McDavid, real quick, out 1 to 2 weeks with an upper body injury. It's funny. Brendan actually brought up that he was convinced that McDavid was playing hurt from the start of the season, and the game against the Jets only exacerbated the injury. And if you look at the point production or lack thereof, better is a better way to say it. It's not out of the realm of possibility that he was going into the season with something. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that was a very good observation from Brendan, right? When you see the best player in the world not necessarily performing like he normally does, injury, I guess, is the first thing that comes to the forefront of the fan's mind. Of course, it's unfortunate. You never want to see one of the league's top stars or the league's top star out for any extended period of time. But for the Oilers, I guess timing wise, I guess if it was going to happen, they're happy it happened at the beginning of the season and not towards the stretch run where they're really going to need number 97 to help push them towards the playoffs. So, and for our beloved New York Rangers, we don't have to see them, this upcoming week as the Rangers embark on their West Coast trip in Canada. So again, we'll see. I don't think McDavid will be out for too long, but I wouldn't be surprised if Brendan's suspicions were true and Connor was injured before the start of the season. And Edmonton just decided to go for it. Connor McDavid is a gamer, and these guys don't want to miss time, So if it's anything
Hey,
that's
look at
not
Matthew Tkachuk in the playoffs last year.
exactly, they want to play, they want to suit up. So kudos to McDavid for doing that. But now I think it's going to be a much needed 2 weeks on the sidelines for him.
Oh yeah, 100%. So to stay on the West Coast for a minute, the Seattle Kraken they didn't exactly take the league by storm the way Vegas did, obviously, but they did end up making the playoffs last year in their second year, making it to the second round, and they have started this season horribly at 1-4-1. And the Rangers just played them the other night. They did not necessarily look good. Do you think this is I don't want to say come back down to earth season, but do you think this is going to be a little bit of a tough season for the Kraken, or do you think they're just, getting the rust out of the way early and they'll be back in midseason form soon?
I mean, this is the 30th ranked team in the NHL right now. And again, it's early. I understand that it's early, but this roster remains pretty much untouched from the one that, went to game 7 against the Dallas Stars last year. They're a -10 goal differential. And anybody who has watched any podcasts I've been a part of, Pucks and Brews, over the last couple of years, my favorite team statistic is goal differential because it really does give you an insight into how teams are performing. And they've got the second worst goal differential in the league. And the Seattle Kraken, ever since their inception, since they came into the NHL, were a team that prided themselves around their goaltending and their work ethic. And I don't know, it just seems to be a little bit lacking from where it was over the last couple of years. Even in their first season when they struggled, they didn't necessarily look like this. And again, Philip Grubauer is playing decent. I don't really think it really falls on Grubauer. I think it just falls on, I guess, team defense, coaching, and again, maybe just coming down to earth a little bit from where they were last year. But with all of that said, it's a long season. We're still early, and Seattle can figure it out. But again, the way they looked against the Rangers, they were outmatched at home, and that's even with scoring the first goal of the game, and they got crushed.
And also dealing with this.
And also dealing with that. Yeah. I guess when it rains, it pours, right?
Yeah, and just for the sake of accuracy, their goal differential is in fact -10 right now. So through 6 games, that's not exactly good. Not good.
It's not great.
Not at all.
And again, you don't want to point the finger at any part of the team. I think it's just trying to figure out what this season is going to be for the Kraken. And I think fans of the team really expected them to build off of last year. And sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes you need to take a step back before you take another step forward. And that's what I think we're seeing with the Kraken right now.
Oh, 100%. So going to the East Coast now with a team in not exactly the same position, but somewhat of a similar position, also underperforming based on expectations that we set for them prior to the season. The Buffalo Sabres have been little disappointing so far. Tage Thompson hasn't exactly been lighting it up right now. The first couple games, everyone on that team seemingly got off to a slow start. I mean, as we're Ranger fans, we saw the opening night of the season against them. So do you think this is going to be yet another year of a Buffalo playoff drought? or do you think this team is 100% going to make the playoffs? They're just getting through the early parts of the season at the moment.
Shades, unlike the Seattle Kraken, I actually think that Buffalo is going to figure it out by the time we get to the stretch run and, we're approaching the playoffs. And again, like you just mentioned, we saw the Buffalo Sabres right up front and center against our beloved New York Rangers in game one of the season for both of us. And Buffalo, again, I expected a lot out of them. I'm not sure about you. But
Oh
again, the
yeah.
Rangers really walked all over a Sabres team that, again, last year, I'm not sure the Rangers would have walked all over Buffalo like they did in that game. And it's just a little bit confusing to me because the Rangers got a little bit slower. They added some veterans. They tried to kind of bring this group of veterans and, rookie players together and trying to make it work. But Buffalo, they were full steam ahead. They got a lot of young, exciting, talented players. And they just, again, took a big step back in that game. And it hasn't really turned around for them throughout the first, 7, 8 games of the season. But I will say right now on October 24th, I still think the Sabres are a playoff team. What do
Oh,
you
as
think?
do I. As do I. Yeah,
Okay.
the team finished a point out of a playoff spot last year. You go back to 2020 when the season was cut short due to COVID. If they would have played, or excuse me, if they would have played that one game the day that everything got canceled and would have won, they would have been in over Montreal. And
Right.
well, I mean, I brought that up before, but it's kind of a moot point now because there's no point playing the what if game going back to a COVID shortened season. But just to touch on the Rangers Sabres game specifically, the Rangers did play well, but I also thought it was a combination of Buffalo playing terrible because they were making a lot of noticeable easy mistakes.
They were, and that's surprising out of a Don Granato coach team. And again, maybe in that sense, Shades, you just have to give credit to the Rangers and how they played, right? Again, it's been a little bit of a confusing start for our beloved New York Rangers, and we'll get into it a little bit more as the episode moves along. But again, one of the spots this season where they really looked like a complete team was night one.
Oh yeah.
And I think brand new head coach in Peter Laviolette, I think a sour taste in a lot of the veterans' mouth after getting knocked out by the rival New Jersey Devils in 7 games last year. They wanted that win, quite frankly, in my opinion, more than Buffalo did. So that's what I really think it came down to.
Yeah, and also the Rangers just seem to be one of those teams where they almost always win on opening night. So that kind of has to be taken into consideration too.
Yep. History prevails.
Yeah. So moving to another team in the division of the Sabres, the Detroit Red Wings are off to a red hot start. And speaking of red hot starts, Alex DeBrincat and Dylan Larkin have been absolute money so far this season. And that trade is paying dividends right now for Detroit. Because let's just go back and examine that trade for a second. DeBrincat came to Detroit, and Detroit gave up to Ottawa Dominic Kubalik, a first round pick, Donovan Sabrango, who is an AHLer or a minor leaguer, I should say, and a 2024 fourth round pick. Now, the condition on the first round pick was that Detroit has the option to send either Boston's first round pick, yada yada, top 10 protected or something. We probably talked about that, so I'm not going to go all over it again. But that trade is looking like an absolute steal right now for Detroit, which is yet another Steve Yzerman W.
Yeah, not a lot of people were kind of having faith in the Iser plan, right? As the years have gone along, and I think last year was a very disappointing season in the eyes of, Red Wings fans. Again, I think like Buffalo fans are looking at this year with the Sabres, the Red Wings fans really were expecting a monster season where the young players were really going to take that next step. Lucas Raymond, Moritz Seider, Dylan Larkin turns into that superstar center that he's been knocking on the door of becoming for years now. Again, the goaltending in Billy Husso that you get from St. Louis, who had a good stretch of time over there, who's still young. And again, a head coaching change as well, going away from Jeff Glassill. For me, I think that the Detroit Red Wings are heading in a great direction, and the Alex DeBrincat trade, as you mentioned, only exemplifies, the success that I think is forthcoming and has already happened for this Red Wings team. They just needed some goal scoring. Sometimes you just need some punch on the top two lines, and when you have someone like Dylan Larkin who could really use an Alex DeBrincat for years on his wing, and you're able to get him for, like you said, a package that was sent to the Ottawa Senators that was pretty much nothing, right? I mean, Dominic Kubalik, I mean, he had some good years in Chicago. He really struggled in Detroit. You're able to offload him and his contract, and again, bring back a budding superstar player. And for a team like Detroit, you can do that. You can bring on a guy like Alex DeBrincat, who you're going to sign to a $9 million contract per year. Just like the Rangers were when they were in their rebuild and they entered the offseason and signed Artemi Panarin to 11.75. You got to go for that big fish when you have the chance. Steve Yzerman saw that in Alex DeBrincat, and now it's paying off. So, and I think me and you kind of saw that coming, right? In our season predictions, we were very high on Detroit. So,
Yeah, and even going back to last year, I remember, I mean, anybody can go back and look to see how accurate I was, but I'm pretty sure I said this was going back to last year. Detroit is not a playoff team this year, but I can very well see it next year, referring to this season. And it's the prediction's looking pretty good right now, not to toot my own horn. Yeah, you're on mute.
once every episode.
We are really in true form
We
tonight.
really are. This is a classic Pucks and Brews episode, everybody. But yeah, couldn't agree with you more. We're both high on Detroit. You've been high on Detroit going back to last year. And again, I hope they make the playoffs. I hope they do. I hope the Atlantic Division just as a whole really shakes up. We haven't spoken about Tampa Bay yet, but it's still a little bit of a question mark if they're even going to make the playoffs. Toronto, hasn't really taken that complete next step either. So there are opportunity in the division for teams like Buffalo and Detroit, no matter where they are at this point in the season.
Yeah, and Detroit is taking early steps to make sure that they make a playoff spot. And if obviously we just touched on the DeBrincat trade again, but if you go back to their moves from last year, they added David Perron, they added Andrew Kopp, JT Compher came in this year, they got Daniel Sprong, and you're going to see the continuation of Joe Veleno's development. Lucas Raymond, they're hoping can take yet another step forward. And then obviously the back end still has some questions, but you're being led by Moritz Seider, and Ville Husso is a capable goaltender. So do I think Yzerman's going to make a trade for a defenseman at the deadline? Yes, I do, but that's kind of something we'll need to get back to. But the early season returns on the DeBrincat trade have been phenomenal for them.
Right. And just to wrap this up, I think for the Red Wings, the fact that they have a forward group that they're finally able to rely on, and you're not just throwing rookies out there against the wall and hoping that they stick. Now you actually have veterans and proven players that are helping this scoring depth. You had David Perron 2 off seasons ago. We just mentioned Larkin and DeBrincat, among others. Like you said, the one issue, if there is one for me, is goaltending depth. I like Ville Husso. I just don't know if there's a ton of depth behind him, and the defense, like you said. But Moritz Seider is a number one D-man, and as long as you have that, moves can be made at the trade deadline to help shore up those holes. So,
no, 100%. And with the way their forward group is scoring, maybe you see a Matthias Ekholm to the Oilers type of deal for them. You never know.
Very well could see it. Very well could see it. And again, like people knew that, all around the hockey world, that the one issue for Edmonton for years was defense. I mean, outside of goaltending, but it was also defense,
Oh, yeah.
team defense. And that's the same thing with Detroit. It's just a young team, just in general. So,
yeah.
And again, like the Rangers were in a similar spot, right? When they were rebuilding, who did they go out and get? They got the wrong guy in Jacob Trouba, but they went out and they brought in a top 4 defenseman who they thought could be physical and be their next leader. And I think that's very similar to what Detroit needs.
Yeah, absolutely.
They didn't bring in the wrong guy. I like Trouba, but just not at that cap hit,
We'll get back. I'll have an opinion on this later in the episode. But to reiterate yet again, the trade for DeBrincat during the offseason is paying early dividends for Detroit in more than one way. So to move to a team in the Metropolitan Division now, the Philadelphia Flyers are in first place somehow. I don't know how the hell that happened, but my question to you is how long is this going to last? Because I just don't see it lasting past Thanksgiving.
About a week. That's what I'd say. You talk about a team that is going to fall down to earth eventually. That is the Philadelphia Flyers. I mean, they were a dumpster fire last year, but remember, at the beginning of last season, they were one of the hotter teams, and everybody was looking over and saying, "Okay, John Tortorella taking over this Flyers team. Maybe they got something." And then suddenly by the end of the year, they're in the lottery conversation.
Yep.
So they're going to fall back down to earth. There's no question about it. I still think that they're shopping Carter Hart, and who knows the reason why they're shopping Carter Hart, but I think they might be moving on from him at some point. So I think they're Danny Briere and the Flyers are squarely in rebuilding mode, despite their good start.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think anybody actually took them as a viable playoff contender at the beginning of last season just because of how everything shook out. But yeah, I don't see. I was nice about it. I said I don't see it lasting until Thanksgiving. And then you said, no, I see it about a week. So I gave them the considerate bad news.
You just got to be real. But again, there's always hope for every fan base at the beginning of every season, no matter where, they were projected to be preseason. So keep the hope, Flyers fans. Hopefully it'll last longer than a week. But again, hey, I looked at the Philadelphia Phillies and said, no way they were going to make the World Series again. And,
Yeah,
they're
but they
back
have a
that
chance
way.
tonight.
So you never know.
Yeah, you never know indeed.
Yeah.
So obviously, before we get to the Rangers, actually, you know what? No, scratch that. We're going to get to the Rangers now. So you've said it twice this episode so far. You texted it to me about roughly 5 or 10 minutes before we started recording this episode. The word you used to describe the start to this Ranger season was confusing. And as soon as I saw that word after you texted it to me, I texted you right back. That is the perfect word to describe the season so far. Because you look at the Buffalo game where they looked great. Obviously, I mentioned earlier, Buffalo looked noticeably bad, but the Rangers did look good. It was a combination of both. I did not catch the Blue Jackets game because I was not home. The game against Nashville was putrid. It was so bad to the point where I got a text from my buddy Dan, who said that may have been the worst game since they announced the rebuild. He did preface that by saying regular season game, and I said that I don't know. I wouldn't be able to tell you that one off the top of my head, but I kind of have a playoff game in mind that was way worse than that game. So I'll come back to that.
Please don't bring it up.
Yeah. Yeah, the playoff game that I was at, where they looked just as bad, if not worse, than against the Devils. So in game
It
7.
always hurts more when you're at the game. Always.
It does. At least that wasn't a fucking series ender, the game, and they went on to win that series. The game that I was at against Montreal, game 3, 2017. And then obviously the other two, the NHL app is so effing bad.
You're missing just the Kraken and the game against the Coyotes, the home opener. So
Yes. So the game against the Coyotes, the home opener, was the Coyotes actually looked pretty good and worked us for a good portion of the game, and we were lucky. Okay, I don't lucky might be pushing it, but they were fortunate to come out with a 2-1 win the way they were playing most of that game. And of course, the Seattle game, they looked pretty damn good, a lot closer to the game than against Buffalo. While I didn't think it was as good, it was pretty close.
yeah, here's how I see, the Rangers start to the season. I couldn't agree with you more on the evaluation of the Rangers Sabres game on opening night. I think it was really a combination of both. I think the Rangers really did play a great game, but it was mostly because they were able to capitalize off of the many, many, many mistakes the Sabres made
Oh yeah.
throughout that one, especially early on. The game against the Blue Jackets, I actually think that's a game the Rangers win if two goals go their way. 2 goals were called back in in the first period for the Rangers. So they would have, I believe, would have had a 3-1 lead or a 2-0 lead they would have had. So they end up losing that game 5-3. So I think they just run out of time. Igor, I'll just be frank, wasn't sharp in that game. And there were a couple of instances where Igor hasn't been sharp this season. Want to get your thoughts on that. The game against the Coyotes, I agree with what you said, but I would kind of evaluate it like this. That's a game the Rangers easily could have lost in many different ways.
Oh yeah.
I think that the Coyotes had so many chances to take that game. And I think sometimes when you just don't have the skill up against another team, you just come up short. And that's what I think happened to the Yotes in that game. The Predators game, what your friend said, wasn't too far off. I don't know if it was the worst game since the start of the rebuild, but that was a pretty bad performance. It was ugly. It straight up was. And again, to play like that at home against a Predators team that up to that point in the season, they kind of had a Kraken-esque start. They were struggling. They were a young team finding their footing, and they come into Madison Square Garden and obliterate us. That was an obliteration. They crushed us. And the game against the Kraken, they rebound, they go on the road. That's just what the Rangers do. It's a resilient group. They haven't necessarily had the success in the playoffs, but resiliency really defines this Rangers team. And they go into Seattle in a tough situation with the Lights, and they handle Seattle just as well as the Predators handled them the game before. So I think tonight is very telling. And I think if you can come out with 2 out of the 3 victories against the Flames, Oilers, and Canucks, that's a win for this road trip for me.
Yeah, and they arguably should come out with at least 2 of 3 wins. And
I think they probably lose in Vancouver, but I hope they win the first 2 here.
Yeah, I could see it. But I just looked at the next 4 games, and it is the Western Canada trip. And I do not enjoy these late games. But luckily, the Edmonton game is at 9 and the Winnipeg game on the 30th is at 7:30. So that could have been worse.
Not bad. Not
yeah,
bad,
that 100% could have been worse. But to go back to the game against the Sabres, and obviously to reference the game against the Kraken again, what is the one word that stands out watching this Rangers team compared to the last 2 seasons?
I don't know.
Structure.
Yeah. It look like they have a game plan out there. They don't look like they're just skating aimlessly, trying to make the pretty passing play. It seems like there is a reason for every pass they make, for every shot they take, for every defensive play they make. And Peter Laviolette has the team playing well. But again, for me, it's how bad are you at your worst? And I think we saw the Rangers at their worst against Nashville, and they were pretty bad. So, but they do have a sense of structure that we didn't see last year. But Shades, I got to ask you, man, what do you think about Igor? I mean, are you a little bit worried at all? I mean, he said this year we're going to see a different Igor. Been a couple of tough nights. It's going to happen, but there's been a couple of tough nights. Let's be honest.
Liam, to answer your question, I am not worried yet. I probably shouldn't have said yet, but I'm not worried because I look at it this way. I got so accustomed to Hank getting off to a slow start every season before he finally picked it up to the point where I kind of just got used to it. But I will say this, if it does drag into the 30, 35, 40 game mark like it did last season with Igor, then I'm going to get worried. Because that was I was almost at the point of panic last season, and then he finally picked it up because that was dragging on for quite a long time last year.
Yeah, for me, I know may have come off a little bit critical of Igor, prior to us coming back, but he's still an elite goaltender. He's still, in my opinion, a top 2 goaltender in the league. But with that said, if the Rangers want to win the Stanley Cup, we need Igor Shesterkin to be the best Igor Shesterkin he's going to be in his entire career. So just putting that out there, giving up 5 goals to Columbus. It happens. It happens.
It does.
It does. But with that said, on the goaltending front, Jonathan Quick against the Kraken, he may be all right.
Well, hopefully. I
Well, a
mean,
lot of people jumped off the quick train, so
I jumped off the quick train as soon as they signed him. Actually, no, I was never on the quick train. What am I saying?
I was about to say, did you ever hop on?
No, no, I'm still not over 2014, but that's a side story.
I'm
But
over it. I'm over it. I got to be honest.
no, I'm not. I'm
You
not.
know,
No, I don't think I'll ever be over that
maybe the
until we
day
actually win.
the day Alec Martinez retires, maybe.
Yeah, I want to punch that guy. Anyway, no, I'm not. Like I said, I'm not worried. But this just goes to show you the Rangers play so much better in front of their freaking backups than in front of their starters. This has been a theme since I started watching back in 2011.
Yep, just doesn't just happen to Igor Shesterkin. Happened to Hank for years. So
4 years, whether it be Marty Biron, Cam Talbot, Antti Ranta.
Andrei Pavlich.
Yeah. Hey, Pavlich was an underrated goaltender. He wasn't fantastic, but he was solid.
It was surprising because Pavlich joined the Rangers, then the year after he just retired, hung him up.
Yeah.
Had a good
That
year.
was 2016-17, right?
I believe so. Yep. He
Yeah,
was
the
decent.
season before the rebuild.
Yep.
So, but yeah, I'm not worried. It's like I think he can bounce back. And we saw he played just fine against the Devils. He played well enough to win. The rest of the team just did not.
Exactly. 100%.
So
100%.
yeah. I mean, they definitely still have some kinks to work out because, look at the guys we signed in free agency. None of them have scored a goal yet. Like Wheeler, Benino, Pitlick, none of them have scored. Here's one thing I want to bring up. This has actually been bugging me since game one. Vesey being a healthy scratch for the number of games he's been a healthy scratch so far is legitimately pissing me off now because he was arguably our best fourth liner last year. And now he kind of is just taking a backseat role for whatever reason when, in my opinion, he doesn't deserve to be.
I don't get it, Shades. I really don't. And as much as it's upsetting you, it's upsetting me just as much. And, not only do I think that Jimmy Vesey was the best fourth line player we had last year, he was the best defensive forward we had last year, in my opinion. And the fact, I'm not critical yet of Peter Laviolette's lineup decisions, but that's one where I'm scratching my head.
Yeah.
Nick Bonino has been a very good player in this league for a very long time. I understand he should not be playing over Jimmy Vesey.
Every game. Yeah.
That's it. It's, period, done, end of story. Jimmy Vesey's got to find his way into the lineup. And, I think it's going to click in Peter Laviolette's head when Vesey eventually does draw back into the lineup. The Rangers are going to be playing a lot better on both sides of the puck. So,
yeah, no, definitely a questionable decision so far, but
maybe it's face-offs. I'm trying to figure it out. I mean, Bonino can win draws. I know it's been a problem for the Rangers for years. VC's on the wing. I don't know.
Actually, speaking of face-offs, so I got another text from Dan the other night. It was saying, man, Trocheck is winning face-offs and doing nothing else. Those weren't the exact words. That's me paraphrasing because I forgot the exact thing that he said. And I'm just like, after seeing the text and thinking about it for a second, I'm just like, yeah, he has been winning a lot of face-offs and has also been doing kind of a lot of nothing.
He's fell onto the third line. It's tough to produce. And I don't think he's on the number one power play unit. He might be. It's escaping me right now. But again, things are just a little bit different for Trocheck, and it's going to be tough for him to find his game. But again, I think inserting guys like Jimmy Vesey into the lineup that will complement Vincent Trocheck and help unlock his game. So again, it's multifaceted, but again, it's been a little bit of a tough stretch for Vinny for sure. Because Hedo's taken that next step. Trocheck's not the number 2 center anymore. And that's what you were worried about, prior to when we re-signed him, right?
Yeah.
That we were going to give him a long-term deal on a pretty good AAV, for him to be a third line center, because we knew that Hedel was going to make that jump in the next 2 years, and he has. And now it's kind of hampered Trocheck's ability to be effective.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, don't get like
I like him as a player, though. He brings the toughness.
Oh, yeah.
He's good defensively, 100% effort player, but he needs the right guys around him, and the Rangers don't have the right guys around him. That's where I'm at.
Yeah.
Yep.
But speaking of right guys, even though that kind of a terrible segue, but Will Cooley has actually, I've liked him so far. Good young player who brings energy, lays the body. He doesn't he's not standing out in point production, but he's standing out in the way of, okay, this guy brings something to the bottom six that this team did not have. And it's been good to see so far.
He's exactly what the scouting report described when we selected him 60th overall a number of years ago. 1-for-1 for Elias Anderson. Anderson was playing well in the American Hockey League last year, but I think the Rangers end up on the winning side of that trade. Will Cooley is now a consistent NHLer very, very early on in his career. Like you said, he's tough. He gets to the dirty areas. He's a good teammate. He's a bottom six player that doesn't mind being a bottom six player, as a rookie. Sometimes, players have a hard time adjusting to what their role is going to be at the NHL level. I think this has always been the type of player that Will Cooley has been throughout his career. And it's not really a surprise to me that he's been effective. And again, it doesn't always come down to the points, the goals, and the assists. You can be effective in other ways. And I think Will Cooley, with his physicality, with his chemistry with his teammates, and again, just bringing an influx of youth into this Rangers bottom six that really needs it.
Oh, 100%. Hey, go back to the 2013-14 team. What was the one thing that team had, or the one line that team had where the point production wasn't really there, but they made an impact every game? It was that fourth line.
It was. What was it? Okay. Derek Dorsett was he on that fourth line?
He was part of that fourth line.
Part of that fourth line.
Come on, you're missing a Rangers legend over here.
Dominic Moore, of course.
Dominic Moore. And you're missing another Rangers legend over here.
Brian Boyle?
Damn right.
Yeah. I was very upset when Brian Boyle left the Rangers after that year. That was a player we let get away.
Yeah, I mean, that was let's be honest, that was a pretty bad offseason, but I digress. But Dominic Moore, Dominic Moore, Brian Boyle, Derek Dorsett, and Daniel Carcillo rotating with Dorsett. That was just an awesome fourth line. And in my opinion, that's the best fourth line we've had over the last 12 years.
Carcillo was a beast in the playoffs, and Dorsett, I think, brought more than just your prototypical fourth line grinder. Dominic Moore, I mean, you talk about a guy that can win faceoffs in the defensive zone anytime you need it. I mean, my gosh. And Brian Boyle, of course, how can we forget? Was it game 1 of the Stanley Cup final where he just wired a shot glove side past Quick?
That might have been game 5, actually.
It might have been game 5. Okay. But yeah, no, he had a lot of good moments as a Ranger. And again, the fourth line was excellent. And again, that third line, again, you just mentioned the bottom six as a whole, right? Come on, let's do it. Matt Zuccarello, Derek Brassard, and Benoit Pouliot. I mean,
damn right.
So
still to this day, my favorite line.
I agree. My favorite line, while being a fan of the New York Rangers, is that third line. I agree. They were something else. That chemistry, man, between Brassard and Zuccarello specifically.
Yeah, now, like, fast forward all these years later, obviously our bottom six has never been better. Like, from that point forward up until now. We've had some decent third lines though, but nothing like that.
Yeah, nothing like that. Nothing at all.
Like the kid line is probably
closest.
The closest, but even this is just my opinion, they didn't reach the level of that line.
I think just the fact that 2014 team, their third line consisted of those 3 players was really just incredible. And that the players in the top 6, you couldn't take them out. They were that good. So that was a special team, and that was a special year. And you know what? Maybe I'm not over it, Shades. Now that you just brought back all the memories, maybe I'm not.
Well, if we would have won, I would have been over it in a good way.
Yeah, for sure. But there's always next time. We're gonna get there.
Yeah, maybe hopefully. Hopefully. Yeah, trust me, if there's one thing I've learned watching sports all these years, it's just like you got to cherish those long playoff runs while you have them.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. Especially, a run to the final, because it's only happened once in my entire life. So
should have happened the next year too.
Should have, but yeah, that's another game 7 that I don't want to think about.
Yeah, me too.
Actually, you know what? Just because I think they played worse against the Devils in game 7 than they did against Tampa in game 7. I mean, it's neck and neck, but I mean, they might have played worse against the Devils.
I think they did play worse against the Devils. I think the Rangers, they just couldn't score in game 7 against Tampa, and Henrik just couldn't bail them out.
Yeah.
For me, game 7 against the Devils, I mean, that Fox turnover, right? When the Rangers were on the power play and it
Yeah.
made it 3-0, I think. That was ugly. So
Yeah. Yeah, you can only, there were people, I mean, this is going off on a little bit of a side tangent now, but there were people basically blaming Hank for that loss. And I'm just like, dude, the team didn't score. It's like, you can't blame a goalie if your team scores zero.
yeah,
I
definitely.
mean, even if like a goalie plays bad over the course of a game, you could say, yeah, I mean, yeah, they didn't play good, but the offense didn't score. So,
Yeah, the first goal of the game was a little bit soft, and I think that's what kind of sticks in Ranger fans' mouths. It's that was Alex Killorn beat Hank between the legs, and
wasn't,
I
I'm
think
pretty sure that was deflected too.
it might have been deflected. And then the second goal was just a wired shot by Andre Palat. But I couldn't agree with you more. You don't score, you're not going to win the game, so can't
Yeah,
blame him at all.
nah, but man, those were good times, good teams, good memories.
Yeah, we were. And then
So,
in 2016, just real quick, the most frustrating playoff series I've ever watched as a hockey fan. Just want to leave off on that. I was so
oh,
mad after
actually,
that.
no, that's a good is I don't know if that's the most frustrating series I've ever watched because in hindsight, that team was not good.
Yeah, I think just
I would say I was
expectations.
more frustrated the year after against Ottawa
Okay.
because that's a series they arguably should have won. The Pittsburgh series, they didn't stand a chance after game two.
And they didn't stand a chance against Pittsburgh if the Rangers had beaten Ottawa that next year in the conference final. Let's be
Uh,
honest. We would have gotten crushed. Pittsburgh during those years were two of the best teams I've seen, two best rosters I've seen in the playoffs. Outside of the Chicago Blackhawks,
I gotta
during
disagree with you. I think
those Penguins teams.
okay, first Chicago, the 2013 and 2015 team, absolutely not beating those teams. Then I think it was Colorado's Cup team 2 years ago. Then you can make an argument for the Pittsburgh teams, but that Colorado team was that team was on the level of those two Blackhawks Cups teams, which is saying a lot.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So fun times, fun to look back.
Yeah, and I'm already missing playoff hockey, but we'll get there soon enough.
We will get there.
Yeah, yeah, that whole thing, we were talking about the range. I don't even know where we went off on like the side tangent there, but good times, good times.
Yeah, I think we were just talking about our fourth line and Jimmy Vesey, our current fourth line, with Tyler Pitlick and Nick
Yeah.
Bonino, and kind of the foundation that we're trying to set, in the bottom six that those teams had. So it all
Yeah,
comes
and
back.
now I mean, we've brought up basically the entire bottom six so far. Here's one person we haven't brought up yet, Blake Wheeler. Uh, simply put, he looks cooked,
Yeah.
and
Um,
it sucks to see.
It does stink to see, but again, it's still early in the season. And for Blake Wheeler, he's a guy that's been a captain for the Winnipeg Jets for a number of seasons. Again, leaving his home. I think it's underestimated how difficult it is to leave a team that you've played with for so long, and just a franchise in general that you played with for so long in your career. And coming to New York, whether you're a first liner or a third liner or a backup goalie, if you're in New York and you're playing hockey in New York, there is a ton of pressure on you. So I,
Especially if you're a quarterback that goes down 4 plays in.
yeah, yeah. But for for a veteran like Blake Wheeler, I think he's going to figure it out. And if he doesn't, hey, he's on a 1 year, $700,000 deal, league minimum. So, it won't cost a lot to cut ties. And again, I think the Rangers are at a point, on the same note of talking about the bottom six, the Rangers are at a point where they can pick and choose who they want to insert in these spots. Because if you take out Blake Wheeler, there are a lot of talented players that are waiting in the wings. In the American Hockey League, with Johnny Brodzinski, Bobby Trevino as well. You even look, on the Rangers roster, Pitlick, Bonino, Jimmy Vesey, who's been sitting out. So if Wheeler doesn't pick it up, he could be saying goodbye soon. But I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. And let's check back next episode and see if he's still struggling the way he has been. But he's definitely been under a lot of criticism.
Yeah, and next episode will either be next week or the week after, to be determined. Because if nothing newsworthy really happens, there's no real point to do an episode if we're just really going to talk about two Rangers games and some minor things that happened. So we might just wait that extra week. But like I said, to be determined. This has been episode 49 of Pucks and Brews. I have been your host, Michael Shade Sparacino, alongside, as always, Liam the Shellmaster Godimer. Follow us on all of our social medias listed in the description below, especially on YouTube. Comment, like, share, subscribe, please. Helps us grow the channel, which is something that I am horrible at. And I forget to mention almost every episode, but I remembered this time, Liam. I remembered this time. And in the meantime, Jets play the Giants this weekend, which I am very much looking forward to. Getting together with a couple people in Astoria, gonna be a good time. So they better win.
I think the Jets will win too. Carry on that momentum they got from the Eagles win. So let's hope.
Yeah, let's hope the bye week slow starts, or coming off the bye week slow starts, doesn't continue to be a thing. I really hope it doesn't. But here's some news. For the rest of the football regular season, we will dedicate a few minutes each episode to the New York Jets, because we both are New York Jets fans, and it's my podcast. I can do whatever I want. So whether it be while we're actually recording or we record a separate thing to insert into every episode, yeah, we're going to talk Jets for a couple minutes every week or every episode. So
love that.
Yeah, so
not
stay
wearing
tuned.
No reason today. So
yeah, I'm wearing my first Ranger shirt today. The OG one. So yeah, so we will be back either next week or the week after with the milestone episode 50 of Pucks and Brews. So
hey, only 2 players in New York Rangers history have worn number 50. Can you tell me them?
Nope. I'm terrible with memorizing players' numbers.
Come on, Leah Sanderson and Will Cooley.
I could have sworn they wore like 54 or something.
Leah Sanderson, I'll give you some slack on, but you know,
I probably should have knew that, but oh well. Like I said, terrible with remembering players' numbers. I forget friggin' Kreider and Mika's number half the time.
Don't feel bad. It's my job. So I have to.
Well, at least you have like a sheet of, okay, this guy, okay, and Bobby is skating up the ice. At least you have that benefit. I have to be like, crap. Go to the app. Crap. Whose number is this? Oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, so we will be back with episode 50 of Pucks and Brews. Take care, everybody.